can we learn from David Bowie's estate plan? For once, we're going to look at a celebrity who got it right when it came to estate planning. My name is Andrew Ayers. I'm an estate planning and business law attorney with offices in Edina, Minnesota and New York City. And for once, let's look at a celebrity who got it right when it comes to estate planning. So usually when you see a celebrity's estate in the news, it's because something has gone wrong. I've shot videos about Priscilla Presley, Rick Ocasek, Twitch Boss, Tupac, Naomi Judd, Anne Heche. All of these different celebrities had problems with their estates. Here in Minnesota, we also had Prince, who died without a will and left behind a long, drawn-out battle amongst his family to figure out who would inherit such a large estate. On the other side of that spectrum, we have David Bowie. Now, unlike those others I've mentioned, David Bowie was actually on top of things and created a very strong estate plan that has left a lasting legacy for his family. So unlike these other celebrities, it seems like David really approached this intentionally and creatively and created a plan. And it was a long-term plan. And everything he did is not always going to apply to you in your specific situation, but it may give you some good ideas about things you want to consider for your personal legacy with your family. So if you don't recall, or maybe you don't know about it, David Bowie struggled financially in the 1970s and the 1980s. It came to the point where he even considered filing bankruptcy at one point. But he didn't go that far, and in fact was able to rebuild his fortune. So in the 1990s, he began working with financial planners, and he created what are called Bowie Bonds. So what these were a $55 million, it was a fixed investment with a 7.9% return. And what it was secured by the royalties and copyrights to his music. So he was still able to control his music and control his copyrights, but investors were able to invest and get a return on their investment with these securities. The Bowie bonds were actually created not necessarily for him, but a long-lasting legacy for his wife and his children. And in addition to these Bowie bonds, he also created a series of trusts. At least we believe he did, because by doing this, they weren't going to be subject to a public probate court filing. And so in this case, we believe he has the Bowie bonds flowing into trusts that are there to protect his legacy for his wife and his kids. Now, when you want to look at ways we can apply this to you, let's give you a 3-step plan today. A 3-step plan to get you and your personal finances through your estate plan, and we can learn these lessons from David Bowie. The first lesson we can learn is to understand the law. If you're someone like David Bowie, or even if you're not famous, you need to remember that if your will is filed with your local probate court, that becomes a public document. This is why many people will seek to do whatever they can to avoid the probate court. They may have assets in there that they don't want to be made public after they're gone. Especially if you have a high-profile celebrity, people love to find out what's in their estates, and in this case, there wasn't much for them to find out because most of it was in his trusts. You can use things like joint accounts, beneficiary designations, transfer and death deeds, and other payable on death accounts to find ways to get around having these assets transferred under your will. And by doing that, you'll keep all of that information out of your local probate court. David Bowie really understood this part of the law by creating the trust to keep his estate private. When we go back to some of those others we've talked about, folks who died without a will, like Prince, Naomi Judd had issues with changes to the will near the end. We had to manage Anne Heche's estate. So these celebrities who haven't done the full estate planning, or maybe tripped over a pebble or missed a little step here and there, have created a big public spectacle in their local probate court. You're not going to hear any of that about David Bowie's estate because he had properly planned for it. The second part of this plan is to be intentional and creative. So he worked with financial advisors to create these Bowie bonds. And again, most of us are not going to have a back catalog of music and artwork that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars. However, there are other ways that you can work with a financial advisor to create the best way to protect your legacy. We want to create a specific estate plan for you and your family, so we make sure we know what everyone's going to get and the best way to distribute it. Now, what Bowie did perfectly was working with those financial advisors to create a plan specifically for him, his child from a prior marriage, his wife, and his child from the second marriage. What he didn't do was go to some mail merging form website that's just going to take your information, merge it into their forms, spit it out, and tell you to sign it. That's not creative, that's not intentional, that's just a shortcut, and you never know what you're signing and what that's going to leave behind. I'm often asked to fix wills and trusts that come from these websites because they're not signed correctly, they have improper provisions, sometimes they're even for the entirely wrong state. Step 3 in our plan, work with professionals. just like David Bowie did. Talk to your financial advisor, work with an accountant, work with an attorney, work with your insurance agent. Each of these professionals has different roles for you in the process of creating the best estate plan. Your financial advisor will help you manage your accounts. Where we have beneficiaries, we make sure they go to the right people. Your attorney will be the one drafting the documents in your estate plan to make sure we have all legally enforceable documents and we know what's going to be filed with the court and what won't. And while you're still alive, we'll do things like powers of attorney. Your accountant's going to be very important because we need to understand the tax consequences to what your plan is going to put into place. And some people would like to rely on the financial advisor or rely on the attorney for their tax advice. I'm a big proponent of making sure that your accountant knows where the financial planning is going so they can see if they see any red flags as well. It does not hurt to have another professional looking over your estate plan to make sure you've done it correctly. And then finally, your insurance agent is one that not everyone thinks about, but it's very important because if you have a big life insurance policy or even a medium-sized life insurance policy, we want to make sure it's properly set up with the right beneficiaries so that there are no complications. You don't want that life insurance policy to be for $10 million, for example, and just have it go into your will, and now you have $10 million in your estate in your local probate court. And then if you're in a state that has an inheritance tax or an estate tax, you may now have created a taxable problem when all you had to do was fill out the right beneficiary form. And that's where those insurance agents can come in handy and be very effective for you. So that's our 3-step plan we learned from David Bowie. First of all, understand the law. Second of all, be intentional and creative with what you're creating. And third, make sure you're working with professionals. If you're ready to get started or you have more questions, you can go to my website, andrewmayers.com. There's a red button on the homepage that will take you to my personal calendar. We can set up a free 15 or 20 minute phone call. We call it a legal strategy session, where we can go over the best options and next steps for you and your family. If you found this video to be helpful, I'd love it if you can hit that like button. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can subscribe to the channel. Thanks, and I'll see you in our next video.